If it's happening in professional wrestling, we're breaking it down. The matches, the moments, the rumors, and yes, even the hot takes. This is Pro Wrestling Focus. No nonsense, no wasted motion, just pure wrestling talk. Now, here's your host, Cody Springer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Pro Wrestling Focus. And there's been a lot going on in professional wrestling over the last week. Like, there's been so much news that's been breaking, and I didn't get a chance to come up here and talk about any of it because I had some unforeseen things going on in my personal life, with my family and everything. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to come up here and talk about all of it, but that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about the recent roster moves that WWE has decided to make, and I'm talking about R-Truth, Carlito. I'm also going to talk about some moves that AEW has made as well, and then I'm going to get into some big news items here. Because there was a lot of items out there that I could have talked about, but I'm just narrowing it down to a select few items because, because there was just a lot, and I just feel like I need to just focus on a select few, and those will be the meat and potatoes, if you will, of today's podcast. So today will be a double episode day because I will also be giving you guys my Money in the Bank prediction show as well. That will be right after this podcast, so stay tuned for that. But without any further ado, let's get into it. So, I'm going to start off today's podcast by talking about the big news that came out. It was over this past weekend, actually, when these releases were actually made public, and talking about WWE deciding to not renew the contracts of R-Truth, Carlito, and Valhalla, aka Sarah Logan. So let's just start off with R-Truth, because this one, a lot of fans got pissed off about this, about R-Truth's release from the company. Well, technically not release. They just called him to let him know, hey, we're not going to renew your contract. We're going to move on, and we wish you the best. So they decided to not renew the contract of R-Truth, which is kind of shocking because R-Truth was involved in a major storyline not too long ago with John Cena. They had their match at Saturday Night's Main Event, and the whole Ron Cena thing, people loved that. And R-Truth was a part of a major story not too long ago with the WWE champion, John Cena. So it's kind of shocking that they decided that they were just going to part ways with him. And the Ron Cena t-shirt was one of the hottest selling items in WWE shop. It was like one of the hottest selling t-shirts that they had, so crazy, that they decided to part ways with R-Truth, and R-Truth has been with WWE for a long time. I think it was maybe like almost 15 some years that he was with the company. And that's not even counting the first time that he was with the company back in the early 2000s when he was known as K-Quick. So R-Truth has been a part of WWE for a long time. And the fact that they didn't even offer him like an ambassador role or sign him to a Legends contract or anything like that was surprising. I think a lot of it had to do with age, because R-Truth is 53 years old. So R-Truth, he's getting up there. He can still go in the ring. R-Truth he has not looked like he's aged a bit in like the last 10 years. It's crazy. Yeah, man, this guy seems like he keeps getting younger with time, you know. So, but you know, WWE is looking to cut costs. It's a business, and I think people kind of don't see that part of it. Like, they just are like, oh, fuck WWE, you know, they got rid of R-Truth, fuck them, fuck Triple H, fuck TKO, fuck Nick Khan. You know, that is their go-to response. Just this big overreaction, like, how dare they cut R-Truth, you know, this is bullshit. But they don't understand the business side of it. And they probably didn't even realize that his contract was coming up. You know, I think they were just, you know, they were looking at contracts, and they're like, oh shit, R-Truth's contract's going to expire here soon. You know, we need to make a decision here, you know, whether we're going to renew or not renew. And they chose not to renew his contract. So, yeah, I mean, kind of weird timing for this. But I think it was more so a case where they didn't realize that his contract was coming up until somebody realized, oh shit, his contract's coming up. So, but I feel like if this was going to be their plan, then from the get-go, then they probably wouldn't have put Truth in a big storyline with John Cena. You know, I feel like if they knew Truth's contract was coming up, that, you know, they wouldn't have put him in that big of a story with Cena, you know. But I don't know. I don't know what their thinking is internally. Like I said, it's a bit surprising they decided to cut ties with the guy, you know, now, especially considering he was in a big storyline with Cena and everything. But it is what it is. You know, the point is, R-Truth is no longer with the company. And who knows, you know, maybe here in a couple months, maybe WWE will reach out to R-Truth and offer him a Legends contract. Who knows? But if not, then, well, I'm sure TNA would like to have him. I think they've already put it out there that they would be interested in bringing him into TNA. I think he's been in TNA before as Ron Killings, is his actual name. So, yeah, Truth is going to be fine. You know, no need to worry about R-Truth. You know, he's going to be just fine. And then Carlito was also another talent they decided not to renew the contract of. And it was kind of interesting that they chose to send Carlito packing too, considering he was still a part of the Judgment Day. You know, he was still a part of that group, you know, with Finn, JD, McDonough, Dominic Mysterio, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez. Yeah, so weird timing for this one as well, you know. So yeah, Carlito was informed that they were not going to renew his contract either. And, you know, Carlito, you know, he put it out there on social media jokingly, like, that WWE wants him to pay back all the money he stole. You know, so you know, Carlito, you know, I feel like with him, like, he has this sense of humor that not very many people understand or get, and it could rub some people the wrong way. And I also kind of feel like he did himself no favors at all with what he did on Raw several months ago, when it was him, Adam Pearce, in a segment with Io Sky and Kairi Sane, I believe, and they were speaking Japanese, and Carlito, not understanding what they were saying, told Pierce, like, I don't know what they were saying, you know, I don't speak Chinese. And that was not a scripted line. So Carlito went off script and said that, and kind of made that insensitive remark, and it, you know, and that was considered to be a potentially racist remark. And I heard that Carlito got heat for that backstage. And yeah, I could see why the company got pissed about that, because, WWE, they're big on image, image. They don't want to be perceived in any negative light. They don't want to be perceived as racist or anything like that. So yeah, I can see why Carlito got heat for that. So I think that could have also been a factor as well. Carlito being kind of unpredictable on what he's going to say. And yeah, so I think, they realized his contract was coming up too. So they decided, we're not going to re-sign him. And then Valhalla was the last one, aka Sarah Logan. Yeah, I mean, I like Sarah Logan. I do. I think she was talented, and I think she had more to offer to WWE. She just never really got that chance. And I feel like, her best years in the company were when she was a part of the Riot Squad with Liv Morgan and Ruby Riot, who's now known as Ruby Soho in AEW. But yeah, I feel like her best years in the company were with those two. And I kind of, thought that all three of them had great potential. Sarah, Ruby, and Liv. And, Liv is the only person from that group who has become a big star. She's the only one. And Sarah and Ruby never really got that chance to prove to WWE that they could get over. And, I kind of feel like maybe if they would have came along, later on in their careers when Triple H was in charge, maybe they would get better opportunities. But in the case of Valhalla, she seemed like she was more focused on her family. If you don't know, she's married to Eric, of the War Raiders, or yeah, they're called the War Raiders now, not the Viking Raiders. I think they're now the War Raiders. Yeah, she's married to Eric, and they have 2 kids, and she's been mostly focused on her family, which she should be. And now she's mostly been used as a manager, valet for the War Raiders, for Eric and Ivar. That's been her main role, since she's been this character of Valhalla. She rarely wrestled. She might have wrestled on Main Event or some other, non-important show. But yeah, like, she didn't really get in the ring that much. She was just mainly used as a valet for the War Raiders, and now WWE has decided not to renew her contract. And it looks like, she posted on Instagram, and it kind of seemed like she's said that she's pretty much done with wrestling. That this is kind of like a retirement of sorts. That this phase of her career is over. I mean, and you know how it is in wrestling. You never say never. You're not truly ever retired in professional wrestling, because we've seen so many people retire and come back, retire and come back, So I don't know if this is truly the end for Sarah Logan in professional wrestling, because who knows, AEW could reach out to her and offer her an insane amount of money, and like, it'd be too good to pass up, pretty much. And then she could be like, oh, well, if they're willing to pay me that much, then I'll come in and wrestle for them, But yeah, I think she's going to be mainly focused on raising her family while Eric is still, wrestling in the company, because, him and Ivar, I think, they're a mainstay in the tag team division on Raw. So yeah, I think those two are not going anywhere. I think they're going to be just fine. But, it definitely sucks for Sarah Logan. I wish her the best, and whatever she decides to do with her life from this point on. So, yeah, 3 losses there for the company, but they also signed a new talent, and that is Mariah May. Yes, I've talked about it. It's been rumored for months now that Mariah May was going to be coming to WWE from AEW. There was a lot of speculation about when her contract was going to be up with AEW, but this was the plan all along for Mariah May, that she was going to come to WWE and that she was going to be a WWE superstar. But it's official. She has signed a multi-year contract with WWE, and she made her NXT debut this past Tuesday. And, you know, it looks like they might be changing her name as well, or doing a slight alteration of her name. Don't know for sure what's going on, but honestly, if she's not going to go by Mariah May, just have her go by her actual first and last name, Mariah Mead. You know, I think Mariah Mead is a fine name. You know, I don't see a problem with that. But, you know, WWE is getting a future star right here. You know, Mariah May, I feel like, is going to be a big name. I really feel like she is going to be a big name because she can talk. She has a great look. You know, she looks like a star. You know, she has that star quality. And now she just needs to learn the WWE style. You know, she needs to learn the WWE style. She needs to polish her in-ring work. And that's why they had her start in NXT, to learn the WWE style, you know, which is a lot slower, more story-based, you know what I'm talking about. Because in AEW, they do a lot of flashy moves, a lot of high spots, and sometimes guys don't know how to sell, you know, and that's just been a problem with AEW, is simply that, you know. Feel like it's a lot of choreographed high spots and not enough storytelling, and a lot of no selling. You know, I mean, there are some, you know, wrestlers in AEW that can do that, you know, have good selling, good storytelling and all that, but a lot of the guys just don't know how to do it. So yeah, a lot of that comes from not enough experience. But yeah, Mariah May, she was involved in one of the biggest storylines in AEW over the past year, and that's what was with Tony Storm. You know, that storyline that they had basically carried the company. You know, that was the most interesting thing that was going on in AEW at the time, and those two fought some bloody wars, you know, in the ring. But the goal for Mariah May was always to come to the big leagues, and that is the WWE. So, you know, I felt like it was only fair, since I discussed WWE's roster moves, that I talk about AEW's roster moves as well, because they've made some changes to their roster as well. Not only did they have the departure of Mariah May, they're also not renewing the contract of Abadon. Yeah, Abadon is going to be a free agent. They will not begin their contract renewed. So therefore, Abadon will now be a free agent. And I think there are possibilities for another company to pick up someone like Abadon, because, man, that character, you know, a company could do so much with that. It would make for some intriguing storylines, and they could tell some really good stories with a character like Abadon. And I think that someone like TNA or even WWE could benefit from having someone like Abadon on their roster. Bring them into NXT and, yeah, just turn Abadon loose on everybody. I think it would make for some interesting TV. And I also think that Abadon would be a boost to TNA's women's roster as well. So, yeah, I think they would be a great acquisition to either one of the companies, to be honest. And then AEW also signed Thekla to a contract as well. And Thekla, yeah, I think they have the legit talent on their hands with Thekla because, yeah, she was in Stardom and she left the company in the most badass type of way. You know, they wrote her out of the company by having her attack the president of Stardom. And then she was kayfabe fired from the company, and that was their way of writing her out of their storylines and everything. And I felt that was a badass way for Thekla to leave the company. So that was, yeah, pretty badass if you ask me. The Toxic Spider, Thekla, is now a part of the AEW roster. And yeah, I think they got someone really legit here. She's an Austrian badass. And she kind of does that crab walk or spider walk, if you will, that Bray Wyatt used to do. It was very similar, and she does it very well. And I got to see her highlights of a match that she did not too long ago, because I don't watch AEW weekly, but I did see her wrestle a match not too long ago in AEW, and yeah, and then the submission move that Thekla put them in and made them submit. Yeah, those chicks legit, you know, and you know, I think they got someone good, like a good talent, a good pickup here, and yeah, you know, so I think Thekla could definitely bring some legitimacy here to AEW's women's division. You know, and yeah, I mean, I think she could have some good matches in AEW with some of their women. You know, her and Mercedes Moné, her and Toni Storm, her and Jamie Hayter. You know, I think she actually attacked Jamie Hayter her first night in the company. So yeah, I mean, Thekla, I think she's going to be a name to watch for sure. You know, yeah, so those Austrians are starting to come up, man. You know, Gunther in WWE and Thekla in AEW. Yeah, it's going to be, yeah, those Austrians, yeah, they're starting to come up in the wrestling business. So, yeah, let's keep an eye out for more Austrian professional wrestlers. And, yeah, because I'm telling you, they're just getting them from all over. Japan, Australia, Austria, Scotland, UK, Canada, you know, they're just getting them from all over the place. So there's been a hot news item out there about Roman Reigns. Yes, Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table, whatever you want to call him. Apparently, TKO feels that Roman Reigns is making way too much money for his part-time status, and that TKO wants to renegotiate Roman Reigns' $15 million salary, because apparently Roman Reigns had a base salary last year of $5 million, but between merchandise sales, being involved with the video game and making bonuses from PLEs, Roman actually made $15 million total. So he made $10 million off of the $5 million that he was going to get for his base salary. But yeah, TKO, you know, that owns the WWE, wants to renegotiate Roman Reigns' salary so they can cut costs, because apparently TKO has a debt of $3 billion. $3 billion. I am flabbergasted at this company, you know, with all the money that they're making from WWE for the record TV deals, you know, the Netflix deal, the deal with the USA Network, the deal with the CW for NXT, and then the record number of crowds that are showing up for these PLEs. You mean to tell me that they've incurred $3 billion in debt? How? I mean, I know that they also own UFC and PBR, professional bull riding. But if UFC and PBR are costing them money instead of making them money, then they need to make changes to UFC and PBR. You know, why does WWE have to suffer at the expense of companies that are not making TKO a dime? You know, you have your most profitable business, which is the WWE, you know, that, you know, has been doing very well since Triple H took over the pen for Vince McMahon, and he's been running creative and has the role of chief content officer. And we're going to get into Triple H here in a little bit, but you mean to tell me that you are that badly in debt when WWE is doing that well business wise? I don't know what to say. I don't know how TKO has incurred that much debt. I don't even think Vince McMahon incurred that much debt when he was running the company. I mean, $3 billion. I mean, there are other companies that incur billions of dollars in debt, like Disney. Disney's got way much more debt than TKO. You know, I mean, how the Snow White movie bombed very badly at the box office, so I'm sure that they're going to incur a lot of debt from that. But I'm not here to talk about, you know, pop culture or anything like that. You know, I'm here to talk about wrestling. But that's just an example. You know, Disney, a company like that, incurring so much more debt than TKO. I don't know if they're just paying outrageous contracts for wrestlers, or UFC is just going downhill, or what's going on. Because UFC, I mean, the problem with the UFC is that for their main card, when they do pay-per-views with ESPN Plus, like the main card doesn't even start until 10 o'clock at night. Like, that's late, you know? I mean, the prelims, you know, start at like, what, 7 o'clock or something like that, 7, 8. So you got like 2 to 3 hours of preliminary fights. And then you get to the main card, which doesn't start until 10 o'clock at night. And, you know, people don't really want to stay up until 2 a.m. to watch UFC. And not to mention, you know, the pay-per-views are like $80 a pop. I'm not sure if that's exact, but I'm pretty sure they're probably somewhere close to $60 to $70 to $80 per pay-per-view. Now, my hope is that once the ESPN deal with UFC is over, that UFC is going to, you know, do what WWE's been doing. You know, that they're going to start doing the PLE concept that WWE has been doing. Because right now, the way they're doing it, people just don't have the money to blow on a UFC pay-per-view. I mean, the hardcore UFC fans, you know, that are dedicated will spend the money to watch UFC. They will, you know, the loyal hardcore fans will always pay, you know, to watch the show, and they will stay up until from the first fight to the last fight. You know, the hardcore fans will always do that, you know, no matter what. But man, I'm telling you, like TKO, they need to figure out their financials, because if they have racked up over $3 billion of debt, that's a little concerning, and that's why they've, cut some talent from the roster. We had the, number of releases that happened a few months ago with Braun Strowman and Cora Jade and Gigi Dolan and a few others that were cut. And then, we just had the contracts of R-Truth, Carlito, and Sarah Logan not be renewed. But yet WWE is still planning on bringing in more talent. They signed Mariah May, which I mentioned a little bit ago. And then I heard today that they're thinking about signing Ember Moon back to WWE as well once her contract is up. So yeah, WWE is still going to sign people. They're going to bring people in. And, they bought AAA. They bought AAA. And that kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Why you would buy another wrestling company if you're having these debt problems. And now it's trickling down to talent, and now they don't think that Roman Reigns is worth paying $15 million a year. And my response to that is, why not pay Roman Reigns that amount of money? Because Roman Reigns is a megastar. The last 6 to 5 years of Roman Reigns' career, he has been the reason that people have been tuning in to WWE. The tribal chief character, the bloodline storyline, Roman's legendary championship run. People were tuning in every week to see what Roman Reigns was going to do, to see what was going to happen with the bloodline. And now you think that contract is not worth carrying anymore? Come on, man. And then, like, somebody on TikTok yesterday, they said that they just need to take out a blank check, talk to Roman Reigns, and just tell him to write down a number. Write down a number for us, for you to be here every single week. To do every Raw, do every PLE. How much is it going to take? I mean, to be honest, this could spell the end of Roman Reigns' time with WWE. I'm not saying they're going to release him. That would be stupid if they released him. But at the same time, if they come to Roman Reigns and say, hey, we want to renegotiate your contract, he might say, well, fuck you, I quit. I got plenty of fucking money. I don't need this job. I got fuck you money, and I'm going to go to Hollywood and, just do what my cousin did. I'm going to be like The Rock. Fuck you. I'm not renegotiating shit. It's not my fault that you guys have debt problems. But yeah, so they are apparently looking into renegotiating his contract. And it's an interesting situation, to keep an eye on. And, the rumors were that Roman Reigns was supposed to return to WWE around this time, as early as, tomorrow night's Money in the Bank PLE. But we'll see, if that's going to happen or not. But yeah, it's an interesting situation to keep an eye on. But at the same time, we're taking it with a grain of salt because it's coming from Jonathan Coachman. Yes, Jonathan Coachman, and Lucha Libre Online, of all people, have this information. So I'm kind of skeptical about the news, honestly. But, it's a situation that I think is interesting, and, keep an eye on it. And our last bit of news I want to get into does come from Jonathan Coachman as well. And it's about Triple H. Jonathan Coachman is saying that within the next 18 months, Triple H will be out of WWE. And apparently that TKO is looking for WWE to become more of an entertainment brand than a professional wrestling brand. And that Triple H, that what he's doing won't align with that vision. So therefore, he will eventually be drummed out of WWE, and somebody else will be taking his place as the head of creative. I'm here to tell you right now, if WWE, TKO, if they were to let Triple H go, it would be a mistake. Now, I know some of you online, and I'm saying online, bash Triple H and his creative direction. A lot of you guys don't like it, what he's doing at the moment. And I've been kind of critical about some of the storylines heading into WrestleMania this year. Some of them lacked storyline direction. They didn't tell that great of a story. I was critical of the Bianca Belair, Io Sky, and Rhea Ripley build to WrestleMania, but they had a fantastic match. So the match made up for the lack of storytelling. And then I was a little critical about the Gunther and Jey Uso build up as well. They did some good things and they did some things that were shit. But that's just my opinion. But at the same time, I would take Triple H still than what we got accustomed to under Vince McMahon. Yeah, I would still take Triple H's creative direction, which sometimes is a little questionable, I'm not going to lie. But I would still take him as the head of creative over Vince McMahon any fucking day. I would rather, have Triple H at his absolute worst than Vince McMahon. That's just my honest opinion, because if Vince was still running creative, you would be getting constant rematches and shit stories. And let's not try to act like Triple H hasn't given us some good shit since he's been the head of creative. John Cena's heel turn. Vince McMahon would have never pulled the trigger on a John Cena heel turn. Never. Not in a million years. But Triple H did it. And it gave us one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history. And then the Cody Rhodes build up for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40, with The Rock and the final boss. That was some great shit that we got, And then, we've had the build up of stars such as Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Dominic Mysterio, Braun Breaker starting to get elevated. And then the women's division, we're starting to see Io Sky get into upper echelon as well. And so, yeah, Triple H is building up stars. It may not be happening as quickly as people would like, but it's a process. You just can't make a main event level star like a Roman Reigns in one fucking night. That's not how it works in the wrestling business. It takes time to build stars. It takes time, to build someone up. But I do like how Triple H approaches WWE, because I think he's more of the mindset that I want to make money with everyone, not just one guy. Because with Vince McMahon, it was like that, because it was only John Cena and then transition to Roman Reigns. Because he didn't want to make any major stars anymore. And it came back to bite WWE in the ass. So, but yeah, you've seen it, man. Like, at 1 week, LA Knight would be the top merch seller. And then the other week it would be Cody Rhodes, and then Jey Uso. Karrion Kross here lately has been pushing a lot of t-shirts. And then, R-Truth, before he got released, had one of the hottest selling t-shirts. So yeah, man, Triple H has been making money with everyone, not just one person. Yeah, Cody Rhodes might be the face of the WWE. Well, I would argue there's two faces of WWE right now. There's Cody Rhodes and then Jey Uso. So Cody is more face of the company 1A, and Jey Uso will be the face of the company 1B. So yeah, even though those two guys are the faces of the company, they're making money with everybody. And that is good all across the board for the talent and, for the business. So if TKO were to let Triple H go within the next 18 months, it will be a mistake. Big time. And Coachman, he's saying that, because he says that The Rock has a hand in this. Bullshit. I don't believe that, because The Rock's got a movie project. It's $7 Studios, and Triple H is going to be an executive producer for it. So I don't know why people keep pushing this narrative that The Rock is gunning for Triple H's job. Yeah, because Coachman is putting some horse shit out there that The Rock wants Triple H out of creative, and that Brian Gewirtz is going to become the new head of creative. If that fucking happens, then people are going to start leaving WWE left and right. Because people are not going to want to fucking work for Brian Gewirtz. It's not going to fucking happen, dude. They will not respect him, because he was never a fucking wrestler. That dude he's been nothing but a writer all of his career. He was the lead writer for Raw at one point in time, and then he left WWE and he became he started working for The Rock at $7 Productions. But yeah, the talent, they're not going to respect Brian Gewirtz. They're not. If he took Triple H's job as the chief content officer of the WWE will fucking fail. Because the fans will be turned the fuck off and they will stop watching the product. And then TKO will be fucked. They will be fucked. But if Triple H were to step away from creative, there's only two people that I think could take over for Triple H and still make WWE a success. And that would be Shawn Michaels, who has been doing a great job in NXT, with the creative direction for NXT. And then Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's a creative genius as well. So, yeah, I think those two would be the only two capable people to run creative if Triple H wouldn't be there anymore. So, but yeah, I can't see that happening, honestly. I think Triple H is here for the long haul. The Triple H has made them a lot of money since he's taken over the head of creative. And, people keep fucking complaining. I see this criticism a lot of Triple H's treatment, quote unquote, of black wrestlers. And I don't mean to make this a race issue, but certain fans have been making this a race issue because they have a problem with how Carmelo Hayes, especially, has been pushed. So, is Carmelo Hayes featured on SmackDown every week? Yeah. Has Carmelo Hayes done anything of note over the last couple months? Yeah, he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And people are going to, before they jump down my fucking ass about that and say, oh, no one gives a fuck about the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. Because if Triple H really didn't give a shit about Carmelo Hayes, then he wouldn't have booked him to win the fucking thing. He would have had Andrade win it. But no, he gave it to Carmelo Hayes, and Carmelo Hayes needs to use the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal win as a stepping stone to something else. Maybe a possible United States Championship run. I think what it is, I think people are getting pissed that Carmelo Hayes isn't a main eventer, or he's not in the main event scene. And to be honest, Carmelo Hayes isn't over enough to be a fucking main eventer. Like, you guys act like he needs to be up in there with Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso and John Cena, that he needs to be fucking winning championships left and right. No, Carmelo is not over enough for that to happen. Now, if Carmelo starts getting louder reactions and he becomes a bigger star here in the next couple years, maybe the next year or so, then yeah, we can start having those discussions about Carmelo Hayes, being elevated into the main event spot. But until that happens, Carmelo is fine where he's at. And I think people are over the fuck reacting to this shit. And then look at the Street Profits, Montez Ford, Angelo Dawkins, a black tag team, and they are the tag team champions. So what the fuck's the problem there? Like, oh, they're being booked like a joke. I'm like, how? They've been competing in some awesome tag matches here as of late. Hell, they've been working with Fraxium and tearing the house down with them guys. And then not to mention that TLC match that happened, about a month ago. Hell, that was amazing. And they won that. And then, yeah, dude, I don't understand what the hell their deal is. They act like if a black wrestler isn't featured on every single PLE, then they start calling Triple H Triple K. KKK. He's racist as fuck. And that's not even the case at all. People are overreacting. They need to grow up and they need to get over themselves. WWE, again, is a fucking business. So when it comes down to business, pushing someone like Carmelo Hayes at this time isn't the correct thing to do. Carmelo has to be built up, and people like to base everyone's success from NXT and how it needs to translate into the main roster. Well, look, just because you were a big deal in NXT doesn't mean you're going to be a big deal in the main roster. They give you the opportunity, and you need to take the opportunity to get yourself over. And if you can get yourself over, then you're just going to stay where you're at. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I mean, TKO, if they were to move on from Triple H at this point, it would not be good for the business. All right, everyone, that'll conclude this episode of Pro Wrestling Focus. Stay tuned for my Money in the Bank prediction show. That'll be coming up here pretty quick. And until then, stay focused.